Officer Jack Morrison had always been a symbol of honor and dedication in his community. Known for his integrity and courage, he was the type of cop who didn't just serve the public, he connected with them. For over 15 years, he patrolled the streets, solving cases and building trust among the people he swore to protect. But Jack was never alone in his mission. His K-9 partner, Shadow, a fiercely loyal and highly trained German shepherd, was always by his side. Together, they had formed a bond that went beyond duty, a bond built on trust, love, and shared purpose. Shadow was more than just a police dog. He was Jack's confidant and his closest friend. The two were inseparable, both on and off duty. Whether chasing down suspects or comforting victims, they worked as one, earning the respect and admiration of their colleagues. Shadow's intelligence and instincts had saved Jack's life on multiple occasions, and Jack had always said he owed his success to his furry partner. However, their world came crashing down one fateful evening. Jack had been assigned to lead a critical drug bust, targeting one of the city's most dangerous cartels. The operation was meticulously planned, but something went horribly wrong. A trusted officer was killed during the raid, and the blame inexplicably fell on Jack. Evidence began to surface, evidence Jack swore was fabricated, that painted him as a traitor who had tipped off the cartel. Jack's protests of innocence fell on deaf ears. The media latched onto the story of a corrupt cop, tarnishing his once stellar reputation. The betrayal stung even more as his own colleagues, fearful of association, distanced themselves from him. Overnight, Jack went from a celebrated officer to a disgraced man on trial. The court proceedings were swift and merciless. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, Jack was convicted of conspiracy and sentenced to 25 years in prison. But the harshest punishment wasn't the sentence. It was the separation from Shadow. His loyal partner, who had tried to leap into the prison van as Jack was taken away, was reassigned and eventually retired to a foster family. As the prison gates closed behind him, Jack's world turned cold. The man who had once dedicated his life to justice now found himself at its mercy. Inside the gray, soulless walls, Jack became just another number in the system, treated with disdain by guards and inmates alike. Yet, amidst the hopelessness, there was one thing that kept him going: the memory of Shadow. Jack clung to the hope that someday, somehow, he would see his partner again. Shadow wouldn't have believed the lies. Shadow would remember the man Jack truly was. And for Jack, that belief was enough to keep a flicker of hope alive in the darkest of places. Life in prison was brutal for Jack Morrison. The betrayal by the system he had dedicated his life to protecting weighed heavily on his shoulders. Each day felt like a year, filled with endless monotony and the constant threat of violence. He kept to himself, avoiding confrontations with other inmates, but it didn't stop the whispers and taunts. "That's the dirty cop," they would say, their voices dripping with contempt. Jack spent most of his time reflecting on his life before his conviction, especially his bond with Shadow. He often replayed their greatest moments in his mind: Shadow leaping over fences in pursuit of suspects, saving a child from drowning, or simply sitting at his feet during quiet nights. These memories became his refuge, a mental escape from the harsh reality of his imprisonment. One day, Jack received an unexpected visit from his former colleague, Officer Rachel Bennett. Rachel was one of the few people who had believed in Jack's innocence from the start. She had spent months trying to gather evidence to prove he'd been framed, but her efforts had hit one dead end after another. "Jack, I'm still trying," she said during their brief meeting, her voice filled with determination. "I know you didn't do this." Rachel's visit reignited a spark of hope in Jack. If she could prove his innocence, maybe, just maybe, he could rebuild his shattered life. But even if he were exonerated, there was one thing Jack feared more than anything: the possibility that Shadow wouldn't remember him. Meanwhile, Shadow's life had changed drastically too. After Jack's conviction, the loyal K-9 had been retired from service and placed in the care of a foster family. Though they treated him well, Shadow was not the same. He often stared out the window, as if waiting for Jack to return. He grew restless and despondent, refusing to play or engage with his new owners. Shadow's instincts told him something was wrong, and he missed his partner deeply. Months turned into years, and Jack's hope began to waver. Then, one day, an opportunity arose that would change everything. The prison warden announced a rehabilitation program that involved working with rescue animals. Jack's name was on the list of selected inmates. While others saw it as just another task, Jack saw it as a chance to reconnect with what he had lost. The program was grueling, but rewarding. Jack worked tirelessly with the animals, building their trust and training them to be service companions. It reminded him of the early days with Shadow, when they were first learning to trust each other. Slowly, Jack began to feel a sense of purpose again, even behind bars. One evening, as Jack was finishing up his work in the program, he overheard a conversation between two guards. "Did you hear about that old K9, Shadow? They're retiring him permanently because he's too depressed to work anymore," one guard said. Jack's heart stopped. Shadow was still alive, but he wasn't thriving. Determined to see his partner one last time, Jack wrote a heartfelt letter to the warden, pleading for permission to meet Shadow. "He's not just a dog," Jack wrote. "He's my family. I need to see him." Weeks passed without a response, and Jack feared his request had been ignored. Then, one fateful morning, Jack was summoned to the warden's office. The warden handed him a piece of paper with an address on it. "You have 1 hour," the warden said, his tone stern but understanding. "Don't make me regret this." Jack's heart raced as he was escorted out of the prison gates for the first time in years. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew one thing for sure. He would finally see Shadow again, and nothing, not even the chains of injustice, could take that moment away from him. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as the transport van drove toward the address on the slip of paper. He clutched the letter he had written to the warden, the same words that had granted him this chance to see Shadow one last time. As they neared the destination, his mind raced with questions. Would Shadow remember him? Had his old partner moved on? The van pulled into a small training facility on the outskirts of town. It was quiet, the kind of place where time seemed to stand still. Jack was escorted by 2 guards, their stern faces revealing nothing about what awaited him. As they walked through the gates, he noticed a familiar figure standing in the distance. It was Officer Rachel Bennett. She had orchestrated this meeting, he realized, her unwavering belief in his innocence evident in her presence. "Jack," Rachel said with a smile, "he's here. He's been waiting for this moment just as much as you have." Jack's breath caught in his throat as Rachel motioned toward a shaded area beneath a tree. There, lying quietly, was Shadow. The once vibrant dog looked older, his fur peppered with gray, and his frame thinner than Jack remembered. But as soon as Shadow lifted his head, something remarkable happened. His ears perked up, his body tensed, and his dark eyes locked onto Jack's face. "Shadow," Jack whispered, his voice breaking. In an instant, Shadow was on his feet, bolting toward Jack with a speed and energy that defied his age. The guards stepped back, startled by the sudden movement, but Jack dropped to his knees, arms wide open. Shadow collided with him, burying his face in Jack's chest and whining uncontrollably. Jack wrapped his arms around the dog, tears streaming down his face. "It's okay, boy," Jack choked out. I'm here. The reunion was overwhelming for both man and dog. Shadow licked Jack's face furiously, his tail wagging so hard it seemed as though it might never stop. Jack buried his face in Shadow's fur, breathing in the familiar scent he had missed for so long. It was as if all the years of pain and separation melted away in that brimming with unshed tears. The bond between Jack and Shadow was palpable, a connection forged through years of trust, loyalty, and love that even time and injustice couldn't sever. As Jack sat in the grass with Shadow leaning against him, Rachel stepped forward with a warm smile. "He never forgot you, Jack. Even after all these years, he would look for you during training sessions and patrols. He's been waiting for this day." Jack stroked Shadow's fur, feeling the warmth of his old companion. "I didn't know if I'd ever see him again," he admitted, his voice trembling. He's the only one who never doubted me, never gave up on me. Rachel knelt beside them, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. And neither did I. That's why I kept digging into your case. I found something that might help prove your innocence. Jack's eyes widened as Rachel pulled out a folder from her bag. The evidence they used to convict you, it doesn't add up. I've been working on getting your case reopened. This isn't over, Jack. For the first time in years, hope flickered in Jack's eyes. He held Shadow close, his heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for believing in me. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Jack and Shadow shared hours of companionship, reliving memories of their time on the force. Shadow's playful antics and Jack's laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the years of silence and despair Jack had endured in prison. But as the guard signaled that it was time to leave, Jack's heart grew heavy. Shadow seemed to sense it too, his tail slowing its wag and his eyes growing somber. I'll come back for you, Jack promised, gripping Shadow's face gently. I won't let them keep us apart anymore. Rachel stepped in. Shadow's staying with me until we can get you out of there for good. You have my word, Jack. This isn't goodbye. Shadow whimpered as Jack was led back to the transport van, his paws scraping against the ground as if he wanted to follow. Jack looked back one last time, his resolve solidified. This wasn't just a goodbye. It was the beginning of a fight to reclaim his life, his name, and the bond with the partner who had never stopped believing in him. As the van drove away, Jack whispered to himself, Hold on, Shadow. I'll be back. I promise. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of determination, legal battles, and unexpected revelations. Rachel had ignited a fire within Jack to clear his name, and he refused to let Shadow down. With her help, they uncovered new evidence, exposing a web of corruption within the precinct that had orchestrated his wrongful conviction. Rachel filed for a retrial, and the case quickly gained media attention. The story of a wrongfully convicted cop, a loyal K-9, and the truth that had been buried for years captured the public's imagination. News channels aired footage of Jack's reunion with Shadow, and social media exploded with support, demanding justice for the former officer. At the retrial, Rachel presented the new evidence with meticulous precision. Witness testimonies, forged reports, and missing files were all brought to light. The real culprits, high-ranking officers who had framed Jack to protect their own illegal dealings, were exposed. Jack's unwavering honesty and dedication to the force became the cornerstone of the defense. Shadow played a crucial role in the trial's emotional climax. Rachel brought him to court, and his response to Jack in the courtroom moved everyone present. Shadow's instinctive loyalty and excitement upon seeing Jack spoke louder than words about the man's character. The courtroom fell silent as Jack tearfully recounted the moment he was torn away from his partner and his life. After days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Jack was exonerated of all charges. As the judge declared him a free man, the courtroom erupted in applause. Jack's eyes filled with tears as Rachel squeezed his shoulder, and Shadow barked joyously, leaping into his arms the moment he stepped out of the courthouse. With his name cleared, Jack's life transformed overnight. He was reinstated into the force, not as a regular officer, but as an advocate for justice reform. His story became a beacon of hope for others wrongfully convicted, and he dedicated his life to ensuring no one would suffer the same fate. Shadow retired from active duty and became Jack's full-time companion, their bond stronger than ever. The pair were often seen visiting schools and communities, sharing their story of perseverance, loyalty, and the pursuit of truth. One evening, as Jack sat on his porch with Shadow lying at his feet, he reflected on how far they had come. "We did it, buddy," he whispered, stroking Shadow's fur. "They tried to break us, but they didn't know what we're made of." Shadow responded with a gentle nuzzle, his eyes filled with the same unwavering trust and love he had always shown. Together, they had overcome insurmountable odds, proving that even in the face of injustice, loyalty and determination could prevail. And as the stars twinkled above, Jack knew one thing for certain. Shadow wasn't just his partner. He was his family, his strength, and the reason he never gave up.